Zara stood alone in her private garden, her massive hands gently tending to the crystal flowers that grew in neat rows. At 10 feet tall, she towered over the delicate crystal stems, careful not to break them as she worked. The 3 moons of Lumeria cast shifting shadows across her iridescent skin, making her look like a living statue in the twilight. Being twice the size of normal Lumerians had never been easy. While her people averaged 5 feet in height, Zora had kept growing until she stood as tall as 2 of them stacked together. Her parents had taken her to every medical expert on their crystalline world, but none could explain why she had grown so large. "Miss Zara," a quiet voice called from the garden entrance, "the council requests your presence immediately." Zara turned to see her personal assistant, Mira, standing nervously at the gate. Like all normal Lumerians, Mira was small and graceful, with skin that sparkled like polished diamonds. Next to her, Zara felt like a clumsy giant. "What do they want this time?" Zara asked, her deep voice echoing slightly in the crystal garden. "Earth delegates are arriving tomorrow," Mira explained, wringing her tiny hands. "The council wants to discuss your situation." Zara's heart sank. Every time important visitors came to Lumeria, the council found ways to hide her from view. They claimed it was for her own protection, but she knew the truth. They were ashamed of her. The walk to the council chamber was uncomfortable. As always, other Lumerians scattered when they saw her coming, pressing themselves against the crystal walls of the city corridors. Some mothers pulled their children close, as if Zara might accidentally step on them. She had learned to pretend not to notice. The council chamber was a massive room carved from a single perfect crystal, with seats arranged in rising tiers like a theater. But today, only 3 council members waited for her. They sat at a special table near the floor, one that had been reinforced to accommodate her size. "Zara," Elder Lyra spoke first, her voice soft but firm. "You understand why we've called you here." "Because of the humans," Zara replied, carefully settling herself into her reinforced chair. It creaked under her weight. "Yes." Elder Lyra folded her delicate hands. "The first diplomatic mission from Earth is crucial for our people. We cannot risk any misunderstandings." "You mean you can't risk them seeing me?" Zara said flatly. Elder Thorn, the youngest of the 3, leaned forward. "You must understand our position. Humans are a primitive species. They might react with fear or aggression if they see someone of your stature." Zora wanted to argue, but she had learned long ago that it was useless. The council saw her as a problem to be managed, not a person to be heard. "For the next month, while the Earth delegation is here, you will remain in the Northern Crystal District," Elder Lyra announced. "We've prepared suitable accommodations." "You mean you're exiling me to the old mining quarter?" Zara interrupted. Again. The 3rd elder, an ancient Lumerian named Sol, spoke for the first time. "We prefer to think of it as a retreat. You'll have access to your arts facility. You can continue your large-scale sculptures there." Zara stood up slowly, causing all 3 elders to flinch slightly. "When will our people learn that being different doesn't mean being wrong?" she asked quietly. No one answered. They never did. That night, as Zara packed her belongings for her retreat, she gazed out her window at the glittering spires of the capital city. Somewhere out there in space, a ship full of humans was approaching Lumeria. She wondered what they were really like, these aliens everyone feared so much. She touched the window, her reflection overlapping the distant stars. For a moment, she imagined a world where being tall wasn't a crime, where being different wasn't something to hide. But that was just a dream. Tomorrow, she would go to the Northern District, and the capital would pretend she didn't exist, just like always. Dr. Marcus Chen wasn't impressed by the official tour. For 2 hours, he'd been shown nothing but empty government buildings and carefully arranged crystal gardens. As Earth's leading expert on alien cultures, he knew when he was being fed a carefully scripted presentation. "And this concludes our tour of the administrative district," the tiny Lumerian guide announced proudly. Shall we proceed to the scheduled dinner? Marcus looked at his fellow delegates, all nodding politely. None of them seemed to notice or care that they hadn't met any regular Lumerian citizens yet. He raised his hand. Actually, I'm feeling a bit under the weather, he lied, patting his stomach. Must be adjusting to the gravity here. Would it be all right if I return to my quarters? The guide looked concerned. Of course, honored guest. Shall I arrange an escort? No need. Marcus smiled. I can find my way back. As soon as the group turned a corner, Marcus headed in the opposite direction. He'd studied the city maps before arrival and knew there was an old artistic district nearby. If he wanted to understand real Lumerian culture, that's where he needed to go. The crystal buildings grew less polished as he walked, their surfaces clouded with age. The streets were quieter here, with fewer of the floating transport pods he'd seen in the main city. Perfect. A strange sound caught his attention, something between music and breaking glass. Curious, Marcus followed it down a narrow alley that opened into a hidden garden. He stopped in his tracks, amazed. In the center of the garden stood the tallest alien he'd ever seen. A female Lumerian, nearly twice the size of any he'd met, was crafting something extraordinary. Her huge hands moved with incredible precision, touching massive crystal formations that responded with light and sound. As she worked, the crystals sang, creating a symphony that echoed off the garden walls. Marcus watched, fascinated. The artist was so focused on her work that she hadn't noticed him. Her movements were graceful despite her size, and the art she created was unlike anything shown on the official tour. This was real Lumerian culture. He must have made some sound, because suddenly she turned. Their eyes met, and Marcus saw fear flash across her crystalline features. Wait, he called as she started to turn away. Please, this is beautiful. I've never seen anything like it. She hesitated, looking at him with surprise. You're not afraid. Marcus shook his head, stepping closer. Why would I be? This is incredible. How do you make the crystals sing like that? You're really not scared of me? She asked again, staying perfectly still, as if afraid any movement might frighten him away. I'm Dr. Marcus Chen, xenanthropologist from Earth, he said, smiling up at her. And I'm fascinated, not scared. Would you tell me about your art? For a long moment, she just stared at him. Then, slowly, she smiled back. I'm Zora, and you're the first person who's ever asked about my art instead of my size. Well, their loss, Marcus said, gesturing at the crystal formation. Because this is extraordinary. The way you're combining light and sound. We have nothing like this on Earth. Zora's smile grew wider. Would you like to learn how it works? I'd love to, Marcus said honestly. He pulled out his datapad. May I take notes? The integration of art and technology in your culture is exactly what I came here to study. For the next hour, Zara showed him how she manipulated the crystal formations. She explained how her size, which others saw as a flaw, actually allowed her to work with larger crystals that produced more complex harmonies. Marcus asked countless questions, genuinely amazed by both her skill and her insights. Neither of them noticed the shocked Lumerian official who spotted them from a distance, nor saw him hurry away to report this unauthorized encounter to the council. The council chamber erupted in chaos the next morning. Elder Lyra's voice rose above the others, sharp with anger. Who allowed this human to wander off alone? She demanded. And now he's discovered our problem. Marcus stood calmly before the council, his datapad clutched in his hands. They had dragged him from his breakfast for this emergency meeting, but he wasn't intimidated. If by problem you mean the most talented artist I've encountered on your world, then yes, I did discover her, he said firmly. Elder Thorn leaned forward, his crystalline features tight with concern. Dr. Chen, you don't understand. Zara is a genetic anomaly. She's dangerous. The only dangerous thing I saw, Marcus interrupted, was the way your society wastes her talents. Before the council could respond, the chamber doors burst open. Zara's parents rushed in, followed by guards trying to stop them. "What is this we hear about our daughter?" Zara's father demanded. His small frame shook with emotion. She was supposed to stay in the northern district. Zara herself entered last, having to duck to fit through the doorway. The chamber fell silent at her appearance. She stood tall, despite the disapproving stares. "I was working in my garden," she said quietly. "I didn't break any rules." "You exposed yourself to our honored guest," Elder Lyra snapped. "Do you realize what you've done to our reputation?" Marcus had heard enough. "Actually, I'd say she's enhanced it considerably." He held up his datapad. "I've already sent preliminary notes to my colleagues on Earth. They're fascinated by the unique crystalline harmonics she's able to create due to her size. Several major universities have expressed interest in cultural exchange programs." The council members exchanged worried looks. Earth's universities were powerful and wealthy. Refusing their interest could damage diplomatic relations. Zara, her mother, stepped forward, wringing her delicate hands. "You must understand, we've only ever wanted to protect you. Our society, it's not ready for someone like you." "Then perhaps your society needs to change," Marcus suggested. He looked up at Zara with a smile. "Where I come from, we believe diversity makes us stronger. This is outrageous." Elder Thorne stood up. "Dr. Chen, you are here as a guest. You cannot simply interfere with our cultural practices." "Your cultural practices?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "From what I've observed, art and music are central to Lumerian society. Yet you hide away someone who creates entirely new forms of both. That seems like interfering with your own cultural practices." Zara moved to stand beside Marcus, her huge frame casting a shadow over the council table. For once, she didn't try to make herself smaller. "All my life," she said, her voice echoing in the chamber, "you've told me I was too big, too different, too wrong. But this human saw beauty where you only saw a problem. Maybe he's right. Maybe it's time for change. The Earth universities will expect an answer soon," Marcus added quietly. "It would be a shame to tell them that Lumeria isn't interested in sharing its artistic achievements." The council members huddled together, whispering urgently. Zara's parents watched with worried faces, while guards shifted uncomfortably at the doors. Finally, Elder Lyra spoke. "We will consider allowing some limited cultural exchange programs, under strict supervision, of course." It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Marcus smiled up at Zara, seeing hope brighten her crystalline features. As they left the chamber together, Zara whispered, "Thank you for standing up for me." "I only spoke the truth," Marcus replied. "Though I suspect we've just made things more complicated for both of us." He was right. Outside the chamber, they could already hear whispers spreading through the crystal corridors. The story of the giant Lumerian and the human who defended her was racing through the city like wildfire. Change was coming to Lumeria, whether the council liked it or not. The next evening, Zara sat cross-legged in her garden, making herself as small as possible while peering at Marcus' datapad. Her large fingers carefully touched the screen as images of Earth art appeared. "This is the Statue of Liberty," Marcus explained, zooming in on the green figure. "She's over 300 feet tall. Humans built her to welcome people from different lands to our country." 300 feet. Zora's eyes widened. "And your people aren't afraid of her size." "Just the opposite. People travel from all over Earth to see her. We celebrate big things." Marcus swiped to another image. "Look at this, Mount Rushmore. We carved giant faces right into a mountain." Zara touched the screen gently. "But why?" "My people believe smaller things are more beautiful, more civilized." "Beauty isn't about size," Marcus said, pulling up more images. "Look at these. The Egyptian pyramids, the Great Wall of China, the towering skyscrapers of New York. Humans find beauty in all scales." A small group of young Lumerians had gathered at the garden entrance, watching curiously. Since the council meeting, more people had been brave enough to come near Zara, though most still kept their distance. Marcus noticed them and raised his voice slightly. On Earth, we have a saying, "Beauty is in the eye of the beholder." It means different people find different things beautiful. One of the young Lumerians stepped forward. "But how can you work with someone so large?" she asked Marcus. "Size doesn't matter when you're sharing ideas," Marcus replied. He pulled up a new image, a ballet performance. "See this. These dancers are all different sizes, but together they create something beautiful." The young Lumerians moved closer, their natural curiosity overcoming their fear. Zara remained very still, hardly daring to breathe as they approached. "Can you show us more?" one of them asked. For the next hour, Marcus shared images and videos of Earth's diverse art forms. He showed them massive sculptures, tiny detailed paintings, and everything in between. The young Lumerians asked questions, their fear forgotten as they learned about a world where size didn't determine worth. "And this," Marcus said, pulling up his final image, "is a redwood tree. It's one of the tallest living things on Earth. People protect these trees, build parks around them, travel thousands of miles just to stand in their shadow." Zara stared at the image of tiny humans standing next to the enormous tree. "Your people protect things that are big," she asked softly. "We protect things that are beautiful," Marcus corrected. "Big or small doesn't matter. What matters is what you create, what you contribute to the world." One of the young Lumerians looked up at Zara. Could you show us how you make the crystals sing again? The way you did yesterday." Zara's hands trembled slightly as she reached for the nearest crystal formation. "You really want to see?" The group nodded eagerly. Marcus stepped back, smiling as Zara began to work her magic. The crystals lit up under her touch, sending beautiful harmonies through the garden. The young Lumerians gasped in wonder. More people gathered at the garden entrance, drawn by the music. For the first time in her life, Zara performed without trying to hide her size. Later, after the impromptu audience had dispersed, Zara turned to Marcus. "Thank you," she whispered. "No one ever showed me that being big could be beautiful." "You were always beautiful," Marcus said quietly. "You just needed to see yourself through different eyes." Above them, the 3 moons of Lumeria cast their light on the crystal garden, creating rainbow patterns that danced across Zora's skin. In that moment, she stood tall and proud, no longer trying to seem smaller. And Marcus, watching her, thought she had never looked more beautiful. The main exhibition hall of the Earth Embassy sparkled under crystal lights. Humans and Lumerians mingled together, admiring the small, delicate artworks carefully selected by the council. Nobody knew about the surprise waiting behind the massive curtain at the far end. Marcus checked his watch for the 10th time. "Are you ready?" he whispered into his communicator. "No," Zora's voice came back, shaking slightly. "Maybe this isn't a good idea." "What if they hate it?" "They won't," Marcus assured her. "Trust me." The Earth Ambassador stepped onto the small stage, tapping her glass for attention. "Distinguished guests, we have a special surprise tonight. Dr. Chen has discovered an amazing new form of Lumerian art, something that combines light, sound, and crystal in ways we've never seen before." The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They hadn't approved this presentation, but with so many important Earth officials present, they couldn't object. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus took the stage. "I present to you the Crystal Symphony." The curtain dropped. Gasps filled the room as people saw Zara standing beside her massive crystal formation. Some Lumerians tried to leave, but the humans in the crowd pressed forward, fascinated. Zara took a deep breath and placed her hands on the crystals. At first, nothing happened. Then, softly, the crystal began to glow. A gentle note filled the air, pure and clear. More notes joined the first. Colors danced through the crystal structure, painting patterns in the air. The music grew stronger, more complex. The lights pulsed with the rhythm, creating a display that filled the entire hall. The humans broke into spontaneous applause. Even the Lumerians who had tried to leave stopped to stare. Nobody had ever seen crystals sing like this before. Extraordinary. The director of the Earth Museum of Modern Art pushed forward. The scale, the complexity, it's incredible. How do you achieve such harmony? Zora looked startled that someone was actually asking about her technique. I can reach the resonance points that smaller hands can't touch, she explained. The bigger crystals create deeper harmonies. More humans crowded around, asking questions. Art critics took notes. Museum directors whispered to each other excitedly. Even a few young Lumerians dared to approach, their eyes wide with wonder. The Paris Gallery would be honored to host an exhibition, one human said. The Tokyo Museum of Crystal Arts would pay handsomely for a permanent installation, added another. The council members huddled together, looking shocked. Elder Lyra's face had turned pale. You mean, other worlds want her art? Want it? The Earth ambassador laughed. They're fighting over it. This could be the biggest cultural exchange in history. Zora's parents pushed through the crowd. Her mother was crying, but for once, they weren't tears of shame. We had no idea, her father said softly. All this time, we thought. You thought being different made me wrong, Zora finished. She looked at Marcus and smiled. But sometimes being different just means seeing things in a new way. The Crystal Symphony continued to play, filling the hall with light and music. Humans and Lumerians stood together, barriers forgotten as they shared in the beauty of the moment. A small Lumerian child tugged at Zora's sleeve. Can you teach me to make the crystals sing? She asked. Zora knelt down carefully. It might be hard for small hands, she warned, but maybe we could try together. Find new ways to make music. The child nodded eagerly. Other young Lumerians gathered around, no longer afraid. Marcus watched from the side, smiling. Change was happening right before his eyes. Art was doing what politics couldn't, bringing people together, breaking down prejudices, building bridges between worlds. And at the center of it all stood Zora, finally free to be herself, her size no longer a curse, but a gift that let her create wonders no one had ever seen before. Zora sat in her garden, 2 datapads in front of her. Each contained an offer that could change her life forever. The morning suns cast triple shadows around her as she read them again. The first pad showed a message from the Lumerian High Council. In light of recent events, we offer you the position of Master Crystal Artist. You will have your own studio in the capital, teach at our finest schools, and help develop new art forms. We were wrong about you, and we wish to make amends. The second pad held an invitation from Earth. The International Arts Federation invites you to become Earth's first Lumerian cultural ambassador. Travel to multiple worlds, share your art, and bridge the gap between our peoples. Dr. Chen will serve as your liaison. Heavy thoughts. Marcus's voice made her look up. He walked into the garden, carrying 2 cups of steaming earth coffee, one normal-sized, one in a specially made large cup for her. How did you know I'd be here? Zora asked, accepting the big cup carefully. Where else would you be? He sat down beside her. This garden is where everything changed. Zora sipped the coffee, enjoying the strange earth drink she'd grown to love. The council's offer is everything I ever wanted. Acceptance, recognition, a place among my own people. But, Marcus prompted gently. But it feels like going backward, she admitted. Like hiding in a golden cage instead of an iron one. A group of young Lumerians passed by the garden. Instead of running away, they'd waved at Zora. Some even had started wearing elevated shoes to make themselves taller, a new fashion trend since the exhibition. Your people are changing, Marcus observed. You helped change them. I know. Zora touched one of her crystal sculptures. It hummed softly. But Earth's offer, it's scary. I've never left Lumeria. I've never even been comfortable in my own city. How can I travel to other worlds? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Can I show you something? He pulled out his personal datapad and pulled up a video. This was posted on Earth's global network after your exhibition. The video showed a very tall human girl, probably a teenager, standing nervously in front of a camera. "Dear Zora," she said, "I saw the video of your Crystal Symphony. I've always felt too tall, too different. But watching you create such beautiful art made me realize that being different isn't bad. Thank you for showing me that." Tears formed in Zora's crystalline eyes. "There are more like her." Marcus nodded. "Thousands. From all species and worlds. Your art is doing more than making music. It's giving hope to anyone who feels different." "But what about you?" Zora asked quietly. "These past weeks, working together, sharing ideas," she trailed off, unsure how to express the feelings that had grown between them. "I'm a xenoanthropologist," Marcus said with a small smile. "My job is to study other cultures, not influence them. Getting personally involved with you probably breaks a dozen professional rules." "Oh." Zora's heart sank. "Which is why," Marcus continued, his smile growing, "I've already submitted my resignation from the university. They've offered me a new position instead, Cultural Exchange Coordinator for the Arts Federation." Zora's eyes widened. "You mean?" "I mean I'll be working with whatever artist Earth chooses as their cultural ambassador." He looked at her hopefully. "Though I have a pretty strong candidate in mind." Zora looked at the two datapads again. The Council's offer represented everything she'd ever wanted, but Earth's offer represented everything she could become. She picked up the first datapad and sent her response. "Thank you, but my art needs a bigger canvas." Then she picked up the second one and wrote, "I accept on one condition. The garden comes with me." It's where my story began. Marcus beamed at her. "I think that can be arranged." Above them, the crystal sculptures caught the morning light, sending rainbow patterns dancing across the garden. Like the lights, Zora's future now held colors she never dreamed possible. The warning sirens woke everyone in the middle of the night. The crystal towers of the capital city vibrated with a deep, dangerous hum. Marcus ran to his window and saw something he'd only read about in Lumerian history books. A crystal storm was approaching. Giant shards of crystal rained from the purple-black clouds, each piece large enough to pierce a building. The city's protective shields were failing, their usual blue glow flickering weakly. "Emergency alert," the city's speakers announced. "All citizens to underground shelters immediately." This is not a drill. Marcus grabbed his emergency pack and rushed outside. The streets were chaos. Smaller Lumerians ran in panic as crystal shards began falling through gaps in the failing shield. "Marcus!" Zora's voice boomed over the noise. She was running toward him, each step shaking the ground. "The main shield generator. Something's wrong with it." A group of council members huddled near the central plaza, arguing frantically. Elder Lyra spotted Zora and Marcus. "The crystal core is out of alignment," Elder Lyra shouted over the wind. "Nobody can reach it. The maintenance tunnels are too big for us, but too small for machinery." Marcus looked at Zora, and they both understood at the same time. "I can fit," Zora said. "I'm just the right size." "It's too dangerous," her father pushed through the crowd. "The tunnels are unstable." A massive crystal shard smashed through the weakening shield, destroying a nearby building. The crowd screamed. "We don't have a choice," Marcus said. He turned to Zora. "I'm coming with you. You'll need someone small enough to reach the tight spots." Before anyone could stop them, they ran to the maintenance entrance. The tunnel was exactly as described. Too big for normal Lumerians to work effectively. Too small for their repair machines. "Perfect size for a 10-foot-tall misfit," Zora said with a grim smile. She got down on her hands and knees and crawled in. Marcus followed, using his datapad as a light. They crawled through the crystal tunnels, following the deep hum of the core. Above them, they could hear the storm getting worse. Finally, they'd reached the central chamber. The massive crystal core spun in its housing, but it was tilted at a dangerous angle. Sparks of energy crackled around it. "The stabilizing arms are broken," Marcus pointed. "We need to reset them manually." "The controls are too small for me," Zora said, studying the problem. "But the arms themselves." She reached out and grabbed one of the giant crystal arms with her bare hands. Energy sparked around her fingers, but she didn't let go. "Marcus, the control panel, set it to realign when I get this straight." Marcus jumped to the tiny control panel, his fingers flying over the crystals. "Ready." Zora pulled with all her strength. The crystal arm resisted, then slowly began to move. Her crystalline skin glowed with the energy flowing through her. "Almost. There," she grunted. With a final heave, she pushed the arm back into place. Marcus hit the realigned sequence. The core flashed bright blue, then settled into its proper spin. Above ground, the shield surged back to full power. The falling crystal shards bounced harmlessly off it. The crowd cheered as the purple storm clouds began to break up. Later, as medical teams treated their energy burns, the council gathered around Zora and Marcus. "You saved the city," Elder Lyra said softly. "Both of you, working together." "No," Zora corrected, holding an ice pack to her glowing hands. "We saved it because we're different. My size and Marcus's knowledge. We needed both." Marcus nodded, wincing as a medic wrapped his burned fingers. Sometimes the best solutions come from unexpected places or unexpected people. The storm had passed, leaving the city's crystal towers glittering in the rising suns. But something else had changed too. The way people looked at Zora was different now. She wasn't just the too tall girl anymore. She was the one whose differences had saved them all. 1 year later, Zora stood on the stage of the newly built Lumerian Human Art Institute. The building had been specially designed to accommodate beings of all sizes, with high ceilings and rooms that could fit both 10-foot-tall teachers and 5-foot-tall students comfortably. "Welcome to our first graduation ceremony," she said, looking out at the mixed crowd. Humans sat next to Lumerians, and even a few representatives from other alien worlds had come to watch. Marcus stood beside her on the raised platform, now officially her co-director of the institute. Their own relationship had grown alongside the school, proving that love could bridge any difference in size or species. "When I was young," Zora continued, "I thought being different was a curse. I tried to make myself smaller, tried to hide who I was." She touched one of the crystal sculptures that decorated the stage. It sang softly at her touch. "But then a human taught me something important." She smiled at Marcus. "He showed me that beauty comes in all sizes, that being different isn't wrong. It's special." The graduating class sat in the front rows. Some were tall Lumerians who had finally stopped slouching. Others were humans who had traveled across the galaxy to learn crystal art. One student was even from a tiny species, using a hovering platform to work with the crystals. "Today, these students will show you what they've created," Zora announced. "Not by copying each other, but by celebrating their differences." One by one, the students presented their works. A tall Lumerian and a small human demonstrated a duet, using their size difference to create new harmonies. A group of mixed species showed how they had invented new tools to help them work together. "This is more than an art school," Marcus added, stepping forward. "It's a bridge between worlds. A place where being different isn't just accepted, it's celebrated." From the audience, Zora's parents watched with tears in their eyes. The council members sat nearby, nodding proudly as if they had supported this idea all along. Even Elder Lyra was smiling. After the ceremony, students and families mingled in the Great Hall. Zora watched as a very tall human girl, the same one who had made that video a year ago, demonstrated her crystal technique to a group of fascinated Lumerians. Thinking about how it all started, Marcus asked, joining her, "Remember that first day in my garden?" Zora smiled. "I was so scared when you found me. And now look." He gestured at the hall. "You're changing worlds, one student at a time." A small Lumerian child approached them shyly. "Miss Zora, they say you were the first tall Lumerian artist. Were you scared? Zara knelt down carefully. I was very scared. But being scared doesn't mean you can't be brave. I want to be brave like you, the child said. Even though I'm so small. Small can be just as special as tall, Marcus told her. Look around. Everyone here is different. That's what makes this place magical. Above them, crystal sculptures of all sizes filled the hall, each one singing its own unique note. Together, they created a symphony more beautiful than anything Zara could have made alone. We're expecting students from 3 new worlds next year, Marcus said. The waiting list is getting longer. Zara stood tall and proud, no longer trying to seem smaller. Then we'll build bigger classrooms, she said. This place should be like love, always ready to grow. As the 3 suns set outside, the crystal hall glowed with light and music. Beings of all sizes and species laughed and talked together, proving that differences didn't have to divide. And in the middle of it all stood Zara and Marcus, the 2 tall Lumerian and the curious human who had shown her that love doesn't measure height, it measures hearts.